In the last episode, tensions rose as Ashya and Cecilia attended Dorothea's tea party. The atmosphere became charged when Ashya casually revealed she had no knowledge about oranges, asking what kind of fruit they were. This surprising admission left Dorothea and Cecilia momentarily stunned. Dorothea, attempting to mask her surprise, explained that oranges also grow in Pervaz and questioned how Ashya could be unaware of them. She even elaborated on their structure, emphasizing her point. Ashya calmly responded that the oranges in Pervaz are peculiar compared to the norm, adding a twist of mystery to her ignorance. As the conversation grew strained, Cecilia seized the moment to redirect attention, pointing out that the real focus should be on Carlin's impending return. With a note of admiration, she mentioned that he was coming back with impressive results, having achieved all his objectives in record time. Ashya, eager to stay informed, asked Cecilia for more details. Cecilia obliged, summarizing reports that Carlin had swayed noble public opinion in his favor once more, causing unease for the Empress and Prince Matthias. Additionally, the High Church seemed to be distancing itself from Gabriel Knox, suggesting that Gabriel was acting independently in his dealings with the Empress. Cecilia further noted increased interest in Pervaz, driven by news of Carlin's efforts to rebuild, with numerous nobles expressing a desire to invest in the region. She remarked that this news should be encouraging for Ashya. Ashya, however, hesitated to celebrate, recognizing the potential risks if any missteps were made that could jeopardize Pervaz's stability. She asked when Carlin would be returning, and Cecilia informed her it would be in just 2 to 3 days. With a teasing air, Cecilia then asked if Ashya expected Carlin to bring back gifts. Unfamiliar with the custom of receiving gifts outside of birthdays, Ashya listened as Cecilia explained it was common practice among nobles to bring back souvenirs as a gesture of appreciation for those at home. Despite the explanation, Ashya, who had not seen Carlin in a long time, downplayed her own expectations, feeling it would be greedy to hope for anything special. Back in the capital, Carlin slipped away into the city without notifying Decker, which led to a tense confrontation upon his return. Decker, visibly distressed, demanded to know where Carlin had been, incredulous that he would venture out without an escort. He reminded Carlin of the potential dangers lurking in the shadows, given the uncertainty of others' intentions. While Carlin acknowledged Decker's concern with a hint of gratitude, he reassured him that such precautions were unnecessary. Their conversation took a sudden turn when Decker's gaze fell upon the sword in Carlin's hand. He immediately noticed it was smaller than Carlin's usual blade and questioned him about it. Carlin, appreciating Decker's keen observation, invited him to inspect it further and asked for his opinion. Decker examined the weapon, noting that it was a finely crafted, sturdy sword. Curiosity piqued, he asked if Carlin intended to gift it to someone, as its size suggested it wasn't meant for him. Embarrassed but determined, Carlin asked if Decker thought Ashya would like it, admitting that Decker probably knew her tastes better than he did. Decker, caught off guard by the question, replied with genuine surprise that Ashya would likely appreciate it, considering her current sword was aging and worn. Carlin had noticed that as well and wondered aloud why Ashya hadn't purchased a replacement, given her means. Decker explained that her old blade was a gift from her father, Count Amir, which she'd had since childhood, explaining its lightness and sentimental value. Carlin then elaborated on the care he'd taken to choose the new sword, noting its superior steel that could withstand harsh weather and a design that matched Ashya's form. Decker commended Carlin's thoughtfulness and suggested the gift would have been even more special with Ashya's name engraved. In response, Carlin proudly revealed a special phrase he had inscribed on the sword just for her. Impressed by Carlin's efforts and attention to detail, Decker couldn't help but express his admiration. 3 days later, as Carlin prepared to leave the capital, Beatrice watched his departure from a window of the fortress, her expression seething with barely contained rage. The sight of him infuriated her, she couldn't believe Carlin was defying what she believed to be the will of their god. Gabriel, who had been observing her silently from within the same room, took this tense moment to ask about their previous conversation. Beatrice's frustration spilled over as she admitted that she had made no headway with setting an annulment date. Ever since Carlin's return, he had been expertly manipulating everyone, pretending to be genuinely invested in his contractual wife and in Pervaz. She revealed, with evident irritation, that her informant had gathered intel on the living arrangements. Rooms for Cecilia and Dorothea had been prepared on the second floor, while Ashya resided on the first. However, this situation had become far more complicated. Shortly afterward, the informant reported that Ashya and Carlin had spent the night together following the harvest festival. To make matters worse, there was a wave of testimonies supporting this claim, which caused rumors to spread like wildfire among the nobility. Gabriel, still in disbelief, tried to process the idea that Ashya and Carlin would share a night together. Skeptical, he concluded that this information must have been deliberately manipulated and leaked to sow chaos. With a calculating edge, Gabriel suggested to Beatrice that they needed to reduce the number of confidants around her and Prince Matthias. Beatrice's shock was palpable as she asked Gabriel if he truly believed that the leaked information had come from their side. Gabriel, with a shrewd expression, reassured her that he did not suspect her of making any mistakes. Instead, he turned the conversation towards a more pressing matter and inquired about the medication she was administering to Prince Matthias. Beatrice, defensive and slightly irritated, asked what was wrong with it. Gabriel, ever perceptive, revealed that he knew she had kept it a secret from him. The medication dulled Matthias's self-awareness and alertness. Beatrice scrambled to justify herself, insisting that she had no knowledge of such side effects. Gabriel dismissed her explanation, pointing out that any damage had already been done. What mattered now was finding a solution. He then brought up a new lead. The daughter of Dupret had traveled to Pervaz, and he speculated that Dupret's dovetail services might have delivered information back to the capital. He suggested that Pervaz could be using messenger doves to disseminate messages and tasked Beatrice with investigating this possibility herself. Beatrice was stunned, doubting that they could have missed such an unusual occurrence if it were happening. Gabriel, with a cold smile, told her that precisely because of its subtlety, they needed to create the perfect bait to expose any such communications. When Beatrice asked whom they could use, Gabriel took it upon himself. He declared with a zealous intensity that he would lead those lost souls back to the right path under their Lord's guidance, believing it to be his righteous duty. Trusting Gabriel completely, Beatrice accepted his words. With a final, cruel smile, Gabriel made one more request: she must find a way to eliminate Carlin. A few days later, Carlin finally arrived in Pervaz, feeling a deep sense of relief and warmth, as if he had truly returned home. Ashya greeted him with genuine joy, expressing her happiness at his safe return. In response, Carlin, with a hint of fondness, remarked that it was he who should be grateful for her tireless work in his absence. But as their eyes met, Ashya suddenly turned away, avoiding his gaze and instead directing her praise toward the efforts of those who had accompanied him. Carlin silently noted her reluctance to maintain eye contact but chose not to press her, instead dismissing his servants to rest. Turning to Raffelt, Carlin informed him of pressing issues in Hyro and requested the presence of all key figures. Once everyone had assembled in his office, Carlin began his report. With a touch of sardonic humor, he described his father as foolish as ever and stated that the Empress still harbored the desire to see him tortured to death. More concerningly, he noted that Matthias appeared off, and Grand Priest Gabriel's behavior struck him as deeply suspicious. Raffelt, adding to the discussion, observed that Matthias was indeed behaving erratically, prone to sudden outbursts and frequent lapses into distraction. Carlin mulled over these details, speculating that the Empress might have deliberately driven Matthias into such a state. It seemed to him that the prince had become dependent on alcohol or was possibly using some kind of drug. Intrigued, Ashya questioned whether Carlin was suggesting that the Empress had intentionally supported Matthias, despite his condition. Decker, concerned, asked if the Empress intended to become the Emperor herself. Carlin admitted he wasn't certain but suspected that her true goal was to make Matthias her puppet, ensuring her power through him. However, he quickly added that he doubted Grand Priest Gabriel would simply stand by and allow it. He explained to everyone present that Gabriel and the priests surrounding him were blind purists, rigidly clinging to outdated doctrines under the guise of Puritanism. Their zealous preaching was abstracted and echoed by many other priests, which made them a dangerous force. Carlin described the awe-inspiring presence of Grand Priest Gabriel himself, a remarkably young priest who had ascended to his high station within the Ilahi Church in record time and possessed the beauty and charisma of an angel. Gabriel had everything that people sought: power, influence, and a magnetic presence, which made many eager to follow him, hoping to fulfill their own desires under his banner. But Carlin offered a critical observation: just because Gabriel had become the leader of the purists didn't mean he shared their beliefs. It was possible, even likely, that Gabriel was using those fanatics to further his own agenda. The so-called purists might be nothing more than tools manipulated by Gabriel's cunning hand. This revelation deepened the room's sense of unease, as Carlin's insight suggested they faced not merely a religious zealot but a master manipulator with dangerous ambitions. Carlin decided to stay focused on observation for now, instructing his people to simply keep an eye on the situation and, if necessary, deal with it by sending away a few troublesome priests. As he spoke, he cast a casual glance at Ashya, but once again, she avoided his gaze. This time, Carlin felt a surge of agitation, puzzled and frustrated by her sudden aloofness. Inwardly, he guessed that perhaps Ashya was upset because he hadn't brought her a gift from his travels. Deciding to end the meeting, Carlin dismissed everyone, but he asked Ashya to stay behind. When the room was empty, Ashya turned to him, asking if he had more orders for her. Carlin shook his head, a faint smile playing on his lips, and instead presented the sword he had bought for her as a souvenir. Handing it over, he encouraged her to open it. Ashya unwrapped the gift and stared at the finely crafted blade with surprise. She asked if he was truly giving it to her. Carlin, smiling softly, confirmed it. Her astonishment was evident. She struggled to comprehend why Carlin would consider her important enough to receive such a meaningful gift. Seeing her reaction, Carlin, feeling slightly self-conscious, asked if she disliked it. Ashya quickly assured him that she did like it, but she was curious as to why he would give her such a valuable item. Carlin's gaze turned serious as he explained that he wanted her to have it for her own protection. He couldn't predict how the Empress might strike, and her current sword was far too old and worn to keep her safe. Ashya felt a pang of disappointment, interpreting Carlin's gesture as a reminder that her survival was merely a necessity until their contract marriage expired. Despite this, she expressed her gratitude, thanking him for his thoughtfulness. With a touch of resolve in her voice, Ashya promised Carlin that she would make sure to survive until the contract ended in 2 years. Carlin, suddenly anxious, asked what her plans were for after the contract expired. He spoke earnestly, admitting that he saw her as a valuable ally and hoped she would stay by his side even after their formal arrangement concluded. Ashya, with a slight bow and a soft smile, responded that it would be an honor and that she would strive to live as long as she could. The next morning, Ashya rose early to practice with her new sword. As she trained, her gaze fell on the engraving on the blade, a small but meaningful detail. The sight filled her with unexpected happiness. Carlin must have commissioned it specifically for her, a thought that warmed her heart. In the midst of her reflection, Carlin appeared quietly behind her. Startled but composed, Ashya turned to him and remarked that she hadn't expected him to be awake so early, given how exhausting his journey had been. She asked with mild surprise why he was up at such an early hour. Carlin, with a casual smile, told Ashya that he was following her advice, coming outside to work off his fatigue since his joints were sore. He then suggested a duel to shake off the weariness, and Ashya eagerly accepted. As they sparred, Carlin found himself genuinely impressed by her speed and skill, complimenting her for being much faster than he had anticipated. Curiosity piqued, he asked about her training. Ashya, with a confident gleam in her eyes, explained that her father had trained her to run, ensuring she could escape if necessary. But, instead of resigning herself to fleeing and facing death, she had resolved to at least take down one enemy if it came to that. Carlin remarked with a hint of amusement that Ashya's determination made her quite unique. Most people would simply run to save themselves. He observed that it was rare for a lady to possess such physical strength and skill, making it difficult to imagine anyone else building such a solid body. At his words, Ashya's cheeks flushed with sudden embarrassment. Carlin instantly realized he had made a misstep, understanding that mentioning her physique so abruptly was tactless. The atmosphere shifted slightly, and he felt a tinge of regret, hoping he hadn't offended her with his unintended comment. Ashya abruptly sheathed her sword, signaling her surrender, and excused herself, leaving Carlin standing with a smirk on his face. He deduced that his earlier words had flustered her. Meanwhile, Ashya retreated to her quarters, her mind racing. She chastised herself for squandering the chance to have a one-on-one interaction with the prince, only to withdraw of her own accord. Embarrassed and lost in thought, she was startled by a knock at the door. After taking a moment to collect herself, she granted permission to enter. Nina stepped in and, noticing Ashya's sweat from training, offered to prepare a bath. Ashya gratefully accepted. As Nina turned to leave, she mentioned that there was news of Carlin gifting presents to everyone in the castle. Surprised, Ashya admitted she hadn't heard about it. Nina elaborated, explaining that Carlin had distributed scarves and coats to all the maids. As Nina moved to prepare the bath, Ashya stopped her with another question: did Lady Dupret and Lady Raffelt also receive gifts? Nina confirmed, adding that most people on the second floor received tea, so they likely got the same. When Nina asked why Ashya was so curious, Ashya brushed it off and dismissed her. Alone again, Ashya's face flushed as she pondered the implications. Carlin had given her a gift that seemed special. But as quickly as the thought surfaced, she pushed it aside, rationalizing that perhaps Carlin had simply tailored his gifts based on people's individual needs. The next day, as Ashya was walking past the training ground, Decker spotted her and called out, asking to see the sword Carlin had gifted her. With a little hesitation, Ashya drew the blade, revealing it to the gathered soldiers. One of them immediately recognized the craftsmanship and exclaimed that the sword was custom-made by Sinar Vilman. Ashya, unfamiliar with the name, looked at the soldier in confusion. Another soldier quickly explained that Sinar Vilman was one of the top 5 swordsmith workshops in the world, known for producing exceptional blades. One of the soldiers added with admiration that the sword likely cost as much as a mansion. Decker, visibly surprised, could hardly believe that a sword could be that expensive. Another soldier explained that Sinar Vilman used unbreakable steel, which contributed to the hefty price tag. Ashya, hearing all of this, couldn't help but murmur to herself, Carlin shouldn't have given this to me alone. Unbeknownst to her, Cecilia had been listening from a distance, overhearing everything that had transpired on the training ground. Meanwhile, in Carlin's office, the painter stood before him, ready to unveil the completed portrait. Carlin remarked that it had been a while since he last saw the artist, to which the painter explained that he had been holed up in his room, focusing solely on the painting. Carlin turned to Bailey, raising an eyebrow as he questioned whether the schedule had been set that tight. Bailey, unfazed, replied that there was still plenty of time until the deadline. The painter, slightly apologetic, explained that he had changed the composition halfway through and created a different version of the painting. He offered to paint another one if Carlin wasn't satisfied with the current result. Carlin, intrigued, suggested they take a look at it first, especially since Ashya would be arriving shortly. Not long after, Ashya arrived at Carlin's office. As soon as she entered, Carlin greeted her, informing her that the portrait of the two of them together was finished and that they should take a look at it together. Ashya hesitated, feeling unsure about her artistic judgment, but Carlin gently pulled her closer, making her sit beside him. He explained that the artist had changed his mind and created a new version of the painting, so they should see it together. Despite her nerves, Ashya agreed, and they both turned their attention to the painting, awaiting the reveal. The painter first presented the original portrait, a stunning piece of art that captured the essence of Ashya and Carlin together. The colors were rich, the composition balanced, and the couple looked regal. Both Ashya and Carlin complimented the painting, admiring how beautiful it was. Carlin, intrigued, asked why the artist had chosen to paint it with this composition. The painter, with a bit of hesitation, explained that the change in the composition was driven by his artistic desire. The moment he saw the image, he felt as though he had received a revelation, almost as if divinely inspired. Ashya, looking at the new painting, remarked that it certainly portrayed them as a couple in a way that felt more intimate, more unified. However, Ashya realized the new piece would be difficult to send to the imperial palace. It was bold, almost aggressive in its portrayal. But to her surprise, Carlin ordered that the second, more provocative painting be sent to the imperial palace. The first, gentler piece would stay in the castle. Bailey, shocked, questioned Carlin if he was serious about sending the second painting to the imperial palace. Carlin smirked, unapologetic, and replied that anyone who would dare attack him after seeing the painting was either an idiot or had no will to live. He was confident the painting would have a strong impact. Carlin also announced that he would personally write the letter to accompany the painting. Bailey, still concerned, asked if Carlin was truly trying to provoke the emperor once again, especially considering how hard they had worked to persuade the emperor to cooperate. Carlin's tone grew serious as he responded that all human relationships require a balance of push and pull. He had been patient for a while, but now it was time to pull on the leash. He explained that both his father and the empress seemed to have forgotten exactly what kind of person he was, and it was time to remind them.